All right, guys, welcome back to Tar Heel 24/7. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones joining me from one of the coaches' boxes in Kenan Stadium. Which one is it?
TCU. I've got the stadium there, but the bright lights kind of make for bad video, and they're vacuuming the grass field or doing whatever they're doing. It's way too much noise, so I decided to come in here, and it's a toasty 88 degrees in here probably. So
yeah, we got a lot.
There was a lot of heat on the TCU side, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say we've got a lot to talk about in this one. We're gonna try to add a little bit of structure to it for those who may be tuning into their first Three Things postgame podcast that we do. We tend to kind of discuss three things on this game. I think based on what we saw tonight, there's about 3,000 different ways we could go in this one. The few maybe things we need to hit on more than others, but let's just start off by diving into what happened tonight, first and foremost, AJ.
Or you could just package it. Like there's three massive boxes, and you can tear one open, and all kinds of stuff comes out. Then you could do another one, but we're not going to do a 78-minute video.
No, we could. Very easily could on this one, but we're not going to do that here.
So there could be some things we miss on that we just don't want to. We got more. We're going to tape other stuff. We have to process this thing and give the program a chance to process it here in a couple of days and then come back and do some more stuff. So it's going to be very interesting next few days.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting next few days, to say the least. I'm going to mute you real quick because I'm still getting a little reverb. Apologies, guys. Get a little bit of background right there when I talk with AJ. So I'm going to mute him for a second so we can so I can just get through one of the first things we're going to talk about. Again, Carolina 48-14 lost to TCU in the season opener. We're going to talk about how it was in a lot of ways the worst possible case scenario for Bill Belichick's game one, with all the hype, with all the excitement, with all the buildup, all eyes on Chapel Hill, helicopters flying around Kenan Stadium, one of the greatest crowds I've seen, one of the greatest pregame buildups I've ever seen in my 25-ish years going to games somewhat consistently. And it all culminated in just a good old-fashioned beatdown by TCU, and you have to give credit to them because they were just head and shoulders above North Carolina. But, AJ, before I unmute you, we got to start with this. Carolina fans will always have that first drive. That was said a lot in the stands I was sitting in today. There was almost kind of a running joke, especially in the third quarter, of like, well, that first drive was pretty cool, right? And that was as good as it got for Carolina. Carolina starts off the game hot, marches down the field, scores a touchdown. The fan base is believing. Kenan is rocking. I'm even kind of like, man, maybe this team is going to be pretty good. And then what happens after that, AJ? They get let me add this too. They get a stop on defense on first possession. And you're like, man, the defense even looks pretty good today. What is this? What is this Carolina football that we are seeing right now? This is new. This is awesome. This is exciting. What happens after? Carolina's outscored 41-0. Outgained 417-32. And I tweeted it out during the third quarter. Maybe it was the fourth quarter when the stadium was half empty, AJ. I tweeted it out. I said, I don't know if I preface with this. Maybe I should. I don't take any pleasure in saying this. I'm not trying to rub it in or anything. I feel for every Carolina fan out there that had to watch that, especially with the optimism they had coming into it. But the fact of the matter is this. For those who know Carolina football and the history of it, what happened tonight, in my opinion, was one of the most Carolina football things that I have ever witnessed. Actually, let me rephrase that. The most Carolina thing that I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. And again, I've seen a lot of things this football program has done on the gridiron. But tonight, again, with all the excitement, all the attention, all the hype, for the game to go like that, for the reasons we're going to dive into here in a second, it is truly something that I think a lot of Carolina fans are just going to take some time to really comprehend and kind of understand what they witnessed tonight in Chapel Hill. So we'll start with that. 41-0, Carolina's outscored 417-32 yardage wise. I mean, it was over. Like I said, you had that first drive, but after that, it got out of hand really quickly.
So there was, I don't even know who it is. I don't know him. Somebody in the media, we're waiting at the media elevator as the coaches come by, because the coaches get to go down first. Media has to wait. I got to watch the faces, including Michael Lombardi, who came by. They all look like they just seen a horrific accident. And I'm not trying to be funny. They did. I looked in the elevator, and Freddie Kitchens, just the look on his face, you didn't have to see the game. You looked at it and said, wow, things didn't go well. But you never would have thought the numbers were what they were. So this guy said, "It's the first time I've ever been to a game here." I said, "You just saw the last 125 years right before your eyes. You really did." I'm not trying to be funny, but
you're right.
Man, there's some things I could say here that probably wouldn't resonate too well, so I'll try not to. But the reality is that you could not have been worse. This is my 30th season now covering Carolina football in some capacity. My very first game was the meltdown in Charlottesville in 1996. Carolina lost a chance to go to the Alliance Bowl, which became BCS or whatever became the CFP. And that was a terrible loss. It's the worst loss in the school history because of what it could have gotten had they won that game. So here I am now, all these years later, and I just watched during that stretch the worst football I've ever seen from North Carolina. It's the least competitive I've ever seen a North Carolina football team. Now, I know that, and I brought this up, we're all waiting for Belichick to come out during the press conference. And, someone said, what about NC State in the first half a couple years ago? What about Utah in 2004? What about some of those games at Miami? What about FSU? Yeah, but you kind of knew that was going to happen. Yeah. So the disappointment and the shock wasn't so great. With this, you had no. I picked them to lose. You picked them to lose.
No, I actually picked them to win. I am looking like a straight idiot right now.
I picked them to lose just because I thought it was too much to ask. And people are downplaying TCU, which I've been warning people about for 2 months. It's a good team. But I had no idea. I thought they'd be competitive. I had no idea that they would be one of the most pitiful looking teams I've ever seen for a long stretch. And the thing that I did a spot on CBS this morning, and they asked, what was I looking forward to the most? I said, I really want to see what kind of in-game adjustments the staff makes. And as they're getting outscored 41-0, and they're getting outgained 417-32, I saw no adjustments. I saw a ton of bodies. To me, it looked like an exhibition game, and they were just evaluating people. They were rolling dudes out in the secondary long before the game was out of hand, like there was no tomorrow. It was almost like they were 80%. They're in thud, and it's an exhibition game. They're rotating the centers back and forth, Christo Kelly, Chad Lindbergh. They're running packages. And this is the adjustment thing. They kept doing it. They were bringing out a third offensive tackle. Your offensive tackles were Ja'Kai Moore, Eden Buchanan, starters, right? Then they kept bringing in William Boone from Prairie View, and he would move into either tackle slot, and the starting tackle would move out to essentially what would be a tight end at the line of scrimmage. And they were telling TCU, we're going to run power here. And they kept doing it, and it wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And they kept doing it, and it wasn't working. Where were the adjustments? It was very clear that Christo Kelly, who is a center, things ran a little more smoothly with him than Chad Lindbergh, who's 6'6", and they're trying to make a center. He had a bad snap. I was told by multiple sources, multiple times during fall camp, that Lindbergh was not consistent with the shotgun snaps. We saw that on that 3rd and 5 when they had an opportunity in the second quarter, and Gio ended up throwing the ball down the right side, and it was just timing was a little bit off because he lost some of his timing because of the snap. Mm-hmm. But they kept rotating, so there was no adjustment there. I defensively, we were told that this team was going to be physical. I didn't see physical. They spent a lot of time in thud, which is 80% around there about in August. I swear, I'm not trying to be funny, Jacob. It looked like they were in thud tonight defensively.
I was going to say it looked like a team that hadn't hit a lot.
Other than Will Hardy and Andrew Simpson. Will Hardy had some really nice plays early, was very physical. Andrew Simpson was a ball player. But arm tackling, and again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to paint the vision that I saw, the image that I saw.
Just being honest.
But I said that it looked very Gene Chizik-esque. Mm-hmm. No pressure on the quarterback, soft coverage, and no help. They look like bad communication. That's why those 3 boxes I mentioned, literally you could go in there and check what can go wrong, will go wrong. And the other thing too is we're told about Moses Cabrera, and I'm using this as an example. They didn't look like the fresher team. And TCU was not subbing a ton. Carolina was rolling guys in and out. You'd be fresher. They're just looking at guys. I think they're still evaluating, and they don't want to tell us they're still evaluating. Although it took a while maybe to get into full physical contact. I don't know. I mean, they didn't give us enough opportunities to get the kind of information we need so we can then relay to the fans what's going on. So we can only suppose and go by sources. And when you have 4 sources all telling you something different, you got nothing, right? Yeah. So the reason I haven't had a ton to say, because you got to connect the dots with sources. So I did say to some people in the program, well, you can't hide from us Monday night. Well, sure. Maybe now we know why we didn't get to see them, because they're terrible. Nick Saban sent the warning the other day. It's going to take some time. He's buddies with Belichick. Maybe Bill said, look, man, we're just not that good. We're not ready. I don't know what it is. They didn't look talented. They didn't make adjustments. They did not look prepared. It's like they didn't realize Josh Hoover threw for 4,000 yards last year.
Yeah.
The 33rd team in the NFL did not look like the 33rd team in the NFL. They looked like if you go down the street to some ragtag league where you got a bunch of kids on the team and they wear they got 5 different types of colored pants that they wear. They all got the same jersey, same helmet, but they got like different colored pants. It was like that. And I'm trying not to be disrespectful. I'm trying not to be funny. I'm trying to paint the image in my mind of what I saw tonight. To me, I can only imagine Carolina fans have never been this let down before.
Oh, yeah.
You've never been this let down. You've lost big games. I was here in '97 for Judgment Day. You had the game at Oklahoma, and Belichick and Lombardi loved the 1980 team. Well, they went to Norman, Oklahoma, number 3 in the country, undefeated, well into October, and lost 41-7. I mean, this was that. Mm-hmm. So, again, we talked about the landmines in the podcast last week. Carolina laid down and tried to go to sleep on a landmine out here, and it happened again. So we could parse getting whipped at the line of scrimmage defensively, which they were doing. You had a 75-yard run for a touchdown, first play, second half untouched. 12 real-life minutes later, there's a 28-yarder untouched. That hole was so big, I tweeted out that I could have waddled through it. That was a massive hole. That was a non-competitive snap by Carolina. Not that they didn't try hard, but their play made it non-competitive. A lot of plays were non-competitive. I don't know right now. PFF hasn't come out. I have no idea how many missed tackles. I venture to guess in the neighborhood of 16 to 18 missed tackles. And that's because they just charge one guy usually with a missed tackle. There were times 2 or 3 dudes were there and they couldn't bring him down. So the reality is that this didn't look like the 33rd team. This didn't look like the picture that has been painted by what the program has put out. People that go on TV, on national TV shows, and just kind of like, hey, man, this is going to be amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. I'm amazed at how bad it was. I'm amazed that North Carolina, with the greatest opportunity maybe it's ever had, and it's not over, it's just one game, but they're never going to get this build up ever again. Mm-hmm. Under the current regime. They're never going to get an infomercial like this ever again, not with this regime, unless they just went out and they go into the CFP and he figured it out. He's a genius, which he may do, and he is a genius. But, man, that landmine was nuclear, and everybody saw it, and the debris still hasn't fully landed.
Yeah, there's so many different directions I can go with this. Just to hit on the spectacle, I'm gonna put you on mute for a second because some of that background feedback we're getting. Let's talk about the spectacle real quick of it, because the spectacle ties into, again, what you're kind of saying with this and how disappointing it was overall. I've never seen build up like that for a game. I turned 30 in a month. I've been going to Carolina games for a long time, whether covering or sitting in the stands like I was tonight. It was the best pregame atmosphere I've ever seen. It was the best build-up to a game I've ever seen. They were giving out the wristbands with the lights. You got like a pregame light show. It's packed. I put some videos on my Twitter. You can go see, like, really see the pregame that I've seen that's being shared across different social media platforms. It was unbelievable. And I think I said this to a fan I was talking to during the early fourth quarter. There was when there's, the stadium's not even half full. It was like a spring game in there. And I said to him, this is this is probably the most Carolina football thing that I've ever witnessed, because not only did Carolina come in and kind of lay an egg and lose the game, we all knew they could potentially lose, but the way in which they lost it, the problem with it is all the buildup, all the hype, all the excitement, I'm going to use the word optimism. I don't know how much true belief there was that Carolina was just going to come out and win this game and, run the table and just never skip a beat under Bill Belichick. But what I do know is there was a lot of optimism. And I'm not lying to you, AJ. The energy was sucked out of that stadium. I don't know how much you could tell because you're in the press box with this. It's in the first quarter when TCU started doing some things on offense and they started moving the ball. TCU has the ball early and the crowd isn't really loud. Instead, the crowd, it kind of feels like it's sitting on pins and needles. Like, man, they're kind of like getting through the defense pretty easily. Like we've seen this before a little bit. This is familiar. And it felt like people I think one of the worst parts about it is being in this stadium. It didn't feel like a single person in there was surprised by it. And then all this great crowd, all this pregame build-up, second quarter starts. You talk about the second half starts. You talk about second half adjustments, something Mac Brown was heavily criticized for. Let's not sugarcoat it. One of the biggest things that regime was criticized for was not making adjustments in game. And I said to somebody I was talking to at halftime, I said, what do they do? What adjustments do they make at halftime? That's what I'm looking for. Because if they don't, then I'm going to come on a podcast and say, I don't know what's changed since the previous regime based on this one game. And they they got worse in the second half. TCU takes it to the house, doesn't get touched, first play of the second half, and the crowd starts emptying out. And I don't blame anybody for that. And the game went from this amazing spectacle to like a spring game atmosphere early in the third quarter. The crowd's half full. Nobody's really engaged. Everybody's kind of left. 80% of the crowd that is there is TCU fans. And I caught myself kind of sitting there. I asked one of the guys who sits down for our season tickets. He's been coming to games forever. I said, were you actually surprised? Like, be honest? Are you really surprised by what you witnessed tonight? And you know what he said to me? He said, I'm disappointed, but no, I'm not surprised at all. And I think that for me, forget all the X's, O's, and stats, which we'll talk about more in a second. That for me kind of epitomized what tonight was. And I know it's only one game and I don't want to get ahead of myself. Who knows what might happen the rest of the game. They got two relatively easy games the next couple weeks and they go to UCF and Clemson, which is looking very daunting right now. But I don't want to sell this team out yet. But focusing on this game and what we saw on Monday night in Chapel Hill, it was the worst case scenario playing out in front of the entire country.
Yep.
It culminated again in a half-empty stadium early in the third quarter. Worst possible thing that could have happened. And again, I think if you ask a Carolina fan that's been watching this program and following this program for a long time, just like I asked the fan that sits a few seats down from us, are you really surprised at what you saw tonight? Not really. I think that would be the response that you get most often because what this program has been for so long.
I think that's the jaded Carolina fan speaking. I can speak for myself and say I'm very surprised it was this bad. I'm very surprised it didn't appear that there were any adjustments. I'm very surprised that there was nothing pinpointed in postgame about where it went wrong. I asked Bill Belichick first question. I said, where did it go wrong? Where was that point where everything went the wrong way? You could argue it was the terrible PI on Marcus Allen, where
that
it's
was
like
one of the moments.
But it's almost like they didn't recover from that, which was kind of bizarre. Although it was at a point in time in the game. Okay, you got a PI. Marcus had a similar PI a year ago, responding the same game with a game-winning interception. he's shown, I wrote a story about that this summer. He's shown that he's mature and can handle that. But it was just kind of almost like, whoa, something bad happened. We don't know how to handle it. And everything just sort of snowballed from there. So I asked Bill, he kind of hit on some different points. I asked him also, was there a sense of helplessness? I used that word. And I didn't use that word to be any other way than like, to me, I think it's human for the greatest football coach to ever live to stand on the sideline, look out at what's going on, and have no ability to stop it. No ability to, you can't call timeout in basketball 3 or 4 times and try to stop the runs and sort of quiet the crowd down. When you're getting whipped on both lines of scrimmage, there's nothing you can do. It's got to be a sense of, you could scheme until the cows come home. You could have watched 7,000 hours of film on TCU. If you're losing at the line of scrimmage, you're done.
Yeah.
Done. And so I got text messages tonight from people who I don't think have ever texted me during a North Carolina game. People who are back home where I grew up in D.C., love sports, don't talk about it much with me, certainly don't talk Carolina football with me because why would they? But they did tonight. And one of them said, the joke is on everybody in Chapel Hill, which I thought was interesting. And he wasn't saying, this guy came in and just kind of robbed him blind with all. It wasn't saying that. That's not what he's saying. He said, the joke is on you to think that anybody could turn that around that fast is fooling themselves. And I can add to it by, we didn't really have a podcast about this, but if you look at the NFL rosters right now, there's like 17 guys maybe, I think, in Carolina. 6 of them came to North Carolina as freshmen under Mac Brown. More of them came under Larry Fedora. Mm-hmm. Maybe this program didn't have talent anyway, or it wasn't developed and all that other kind of stuff. And then you get this new staff that comes in. They have to slap a bunch of dudes on the books back in the winter, and then they add guys in the spring. I kept saying I was surprised they didn't add defensive linemen. And we saw tonight that they could have used a dude or two out there.
100%.
And they thought that they could teach these guys to play, but they could all be Julian Edelman or whatever it is. This is what some people are saying, and I could kind of see that. I could see why people would say that. I could see why Carolina fans may see that. It's like, hey, the joke's on you. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen overnight for this program to suddenly become the next Oregon, which is a program that kind of bounced around for a while, and all of a sudden Phil Knight spends $1 gazillion, and boom, Oregon starts winning games.
And it may never happen.
Man, it may never happen. Look at Mac had his reasons why it didn't happen sometimes, and some of them were Mac's fault. Larry kind of hit a point, had a really good run with a good schedule one year, and then they get screwed on an onside kick call. I mean, those moments are few in the last 28 years. You go back to Judgment Day here in 1997. When that was the fork in the road for the program, have they ready, tough enough to win that one? Maybe Max stays, and this program is completely different now. Not the point so much, but this was the opportunity. Mm-hmm. This was the opportunity to show toughness. This was the opportunity that if you're trying to roll Geo, but they're getting through, then maybe you tighten your splits and just do shorter rolls. Maybe you do some quarterback draws. Do something. But when you cannot run the ball to save your life, when you go 3 and out, 4 straight times, and one of them was an interception return, and you have -6 yards of offense in those 4 possessions, and your only 2 completed passes in the first half are on the first drive to the young stud returning talent, Jordan Shipp, who has been featured by the program a ton going back to June when we talked to Jordan. And I asked, well, we're getting Jordan because he must be looking great. Oh, yeah, Jordan's looking fantastic. He's going to break out. They went more than 2 hours of real-life time without completing a pass.
That's an unbelievable stat or whatever you want to call it. Unbelievable.
I will have to go back and look at it, but I cannot think in my mind right now any of them that were thrown to a Jordan chip. It was a colossal disaster and failure across the board. And it's fair to say it. And as competitive and successful and accomplished as the men in that room are, I'm sure that they see it as a failure. I'm sure they're going to look at it and say, okay, now we have all this intel. Let's learn from it and fix, which they have to do. And they obviously get to do that. And if they do, boy, look at what they've done since week one. Now they have a chance to really show their brilliance, right? But tonight, with all the hype that was allowed, with all the buildup that was allowed, with all the talk shows and all the this and that, and I'm not going to go specifically into things, man, this was as rotten a performance, as rotten an egg as you could possibly lay. And I don't blame the fan base for feeling like they got kicked in the you-know-what.
Of course.
They expected more. They should have gotten more. If this team is not talented, then the failure started occurring last December when they were acquiring talent. They ran guys off, Jacob. They ran guys off. I've told you when we're not recording about specifics running guys off. They won their own guys. Well, who are the best players tonight?
I'll give you the stats for it if you want.
You do it right now because who are the best players? I just told you who one of the best players on defense was. It was Will Hardy, who didn't get enough time with the previous staff. I told you that I've been told by sources this staff was stunned Jordan Shipp didn't play more last year. Well, he was one of the best players tonight, but where was he after a while? So you tell us what the stats say, who the best players were tonight. So where was the positive impact of the guys that came in? I think these are fair things to talk about. They're probably very uncomfortable for some people, and it certainly isn't going to score us any points with the program, but that's not my job. My job is to be honest with people. Our job is to be honest with people about what we saw. And we're kind of going a little long-winded on this because we're perplexed, we're mesmerized, we're stunned. I am stunned. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they didn't know how to put a finger in that dam. They didn't have any fingers. They had a hoof, no fingers. They did not know how to stop it. They were helpless. And that's stunning to me, absolutely stunning.
Yeah, one of the things I was alluding to, I'm going to read the stats in a second, but one of the things I was alluding to when I was asking the guy that sits down far from us if he was really surprised, it wasn't necessarily surprised about the fact that, Carolina came out and lost and all of that. But the thing I was trying to get at is, are you really surprised that in this massive moment, Carolina came out and laid an egg? I mean, I don't care if they lost 40-14 or 40-21. It was not a competitive game for most of it. And with all the attention, everything around it, again, that was the most kind of, in my mind, Carolina thing that I've potentially ever witnessed again in my life. But we've talked about that enough. Let me read off the stats. I'll give you Carolina's top offensive players, AJ. You ready for this? Max Johnson wasn't brought in by Bill Belichick. There was a quarterback that was brought in by Bill Belichick who didn't look great tonight, got injured. Hopefully he's okay. We'll talk about that more in depth this week and probably another podcast. Rushing leader, started at running back for North Carolina. Caleb Hood, 31 yards, not much to write home about. And Jordan Shipp leading the team in receiving yards with 84. Again, I thought if there's any shining light or positive to take away, I think he was one of them. Andrew Simpson led the team in tackles on the other side. Again, I thought he was pretty good for the most part. Boise State transfer, but Carolina's top three offensive players were all guys that had been in the program for at least a year and came in under Mac Brown. And for that roster revamp that Bill Belichick did, kind of like you've alluded to, I don't care how good of an X's and O's coach you are. I do not care how many Super Bowl rings you have, AJ. You can't win without talent. And I'm not sitting here saying this team is potentially untalented. I don't, there's not a big enough sample size to know yet. But from what I saw tonight, AJ, it was a team that went up against a good TCU who might end up being pretty dang good this year based on what we saw tonight. Who knows? Maybe they're not. But they were punked tonight by a better football team. They were outplayed. They were outcoached. They were out everything. And that is not the kind of start that I think anybody, at least from what we've seen, what has been projected onto us, anybody in that Keenan Football Center saw coming.
TCU was ranked number 112 in rushing last year at 113 yards a game. They went out and brought in a running back from Texas San Antonio who started one game, ran for 273 yards. He ran for half that tonight. He started one game at Texas San Antonio, a team that was, in reading what their fans have been saying and what their podcasters have been saying, listening to them, like they were a disaster. They were completely feckless in the run game. And they were building up a guy who's been around college football for a while who started one game at Texas San Antonio. That guy made Carolina look bad tonight. Yeah. So that run game made Carolina look bad. You knew Hoover was really good. Hoover made Carolina look bad. Their line of scrimmage, one of the guys with the touchdowns was Devion Deal. We talked about him the other day. He missed a lot of practice, came in. You got to keep the impact type players from making impact. He made an impact. Bud Clark, another guy we talked. If you've paid attention to TCU for the last few weeks, the three names you would have heard: Hoover, Clark, and Deal. Clark picked 6. Deal fumble 6. Hoover, maybe the best performing quarterback in college football this weekend. Mm-hmm. And then a dude from Texas San Antonio who didn't play much, and he was a stud. I think that you have – I got to say this the right way.
So many different things you could say, yeah.
TCU has some stuff. I said to Carolina, one of the things they needed to win 8 games this year was the guy have star power. Mm-hmm. And I also said in my 5 keys, and it's the first time I've ever done it my entire life, the 5th key was score points. Because I wasn't sure what the defense was going to be. But part of scoring points is you got to have dudes who can get a ball and get to the end zone. You got to have a quarterback who can find the end zone. I didn't see any of that. Other than a couple of dudes we mentioned, I didn't see anybody being the one, Max Logan be the one. When I was on CBS, one of the other things I said to them this morning was about one of the snippets of practice we got to see a couple weeks ago. Belichick was single-handedly, he was working with the punt protection unit. They dropped a snap. So the punt team, which has been a disaster here at times and has been one of the sources of angst among Carolina's Legion of fans for years, even with the most detailed coach. And again, it's not the coach's fault. I think it's emblematic of what you said at the outset. It's the most Carolina thing ever. Tom McGinnis, he's been around here for a while. He knows football now, drops a punt.
Mm-hmm. It was, again, I don't want to talk for another 20 minutes. So we'll try to wrap this up. But you kind of reminded me there of, again, I mentioned how I'm going to mute you for a second again with some of that background noise. I mentioned I was interested to see what kind of adjustments made at halftime. That was something the previous regime was criticized heavily for. Carolina got worse in the second half. You're like, okay, what do they look like on special teams? Okay. You fumbled the punt. Okay, that's not great. So didn't really necessarily improve on that side of the ball too much. Okay. Defense. Maybe the defense is better. Steve Belichick did this thing, turned it around. They brought all these new guys in. A lot of guys played under him. They should be better, right? 542 yards later in 48 points was, and I know I know that was some of those points came off turnovers, but still 542 yards later, if you just want to focus on that, not sure they got better. And the offense, you're like, well, they paid all this money for Gio Lopez and this quarterback. Like, he come in, he should improve things. And, they've got a couple of running backs now, maybe sort of, kind of. They went out and revamped this whole O-line. Jordan Shipp's a stud. And they come in and they score on the first possession, and then they don't score again in the third quarter, and they put up 14 points. You're kind of looking like, man, everything that they were supposed to improve on, that we were told they're going to be better at this, be more fundamentally sound at this. We're not going to make mistakes like this based on, Bill Belichick and him being this Hall of Fame head coach that's been arguably the greatest coach of all time. You think adjustments would be made and maybe they'd be fundamentally sound, wouldn't kind of shoot themselves in the foot. These are things we talked about on, for the last couple weeks alone, especially leading up to this game. And I kind of walked away from Kenan Stadium tonight. I know a lot of other fans felt the same. And I was kind of like, what changed? I don't know. There's nothing I can point to tonight that say got better, but I honestly looked at that and say, if anything, the product I saw tonight was worse than the things I saw at times last year. We're not forgetting the JMU game because that was atrocious. But tonight,
yeah, they scored 50 points in that game.
It's a good point.
Even ECU in 2014, they scored 41 in that game. You mentioned the 2 defensive touchdowns. All that did was make up for the points TCU left on the field. TCU was letting Carolina hang in there. They got a field goal on a drive that looked like it was going to be a touchdown. They were running the ball, went away from the run. I thought their play calling kind of took them out of that drive. And then he got the interception, the freak interception. Caleb Cost, the baseball outfielder, made a great play on. There were more points lost there. All those, the pick six and the fumble recovery, essentially got those points back for him. 542 yards. And the other thing, too, is if they really wanted style points, they could have scored again, but Sonny was wise in not doing that because they play Carolina next year. And the last thing you want to do is humiliate someone who has earned the respect to never be intentionally humiliated is Bill Belichick. You can humiliate him because your team just outperforms him, but you don't ever want to rub it in. So I thought Sonny Dykes did the wise thing with that. But their 542 yards and 48 points are legit. Carolina gave it up. We were wondering for a while if this thing was going to hit 50. We've kind of talked this through, Jacob, and it is an abysmal performance. The embarrassment that everybody in this program, especially the people getting paid very, very well as adults, as not in college, people hired to do a job to lead the college guys, every one of them should be embarrassed tonight. Should be absolutely embarrassed. Now, they have a great opportunity. The great opportunity is they got 11 more games.
Yeah.
And remember Notre Dame last year? They beat Texas A&M on the road. They go and they lose to Northern Illinois, a team that won 3 games in the MAC. And people are like, oh, my gosh, there's going to be a coaching change here. And they played for the national championship. I'm not saying Carolina's headed that way, but the good thing if you're a Carolina fan about tonight is every conceivable wart that this team has was on display. You could see it. Mm-hmm. They can itemize it. Thing is, they got a quick turnaround. And don't think for a moment that Charlotte's going to lay down and die for them. They watched this tonight. They're like, holy crap, we got a chance. Yeah. They do. And so now the fascinating part of the story is how quickly does he fix it? And how much of this is on the fact that they just didn't know college and they bringing in players that they think they can coach and get the job done when in fact they can't. And they brought a lot of guys from big programs. And all those dudes struggled. They brought in guys from smaller programs. Some of their good runs early were right over Daniel King, the transfer from Troy, who's a mauler at right guard. That's it. I mean, after that, they had 9 starters, I guess 8 because Blasky wasn't available. They missed Austin Blasky tonight, but in the end, the problems were so deep. Their struggles on the defensive line are so significant. And by the way, one of the starters there was a guy who played 3 snaps as a true freshman here last year. So you talk about holdovers. I was stunned when we got Leroy Jackson a few weeks ago. I thought for sure he wouldn't be in the depth chart because they're going out and get these other guys. Where were the Penn State guys? Where were they? I went back and watched a Penn State coach. I watched one of his press conferences last year, and he's just gushing about Smith-Filbert. I think it's just going to take time. Not everybody plays a great game. My point is that so much was missing tonight. So much didn't materialize maybe the way the staff and the players and people inside the program thought it would. Did they misread themselves? Did they misjudge themselves? Did they fool themselves? Or did they really know coming in, and maybe this thing spiraled so quickly they kind of knew they weren't very good to begin with? Oh, well, this was supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. We've seen that with teams before. We've seen teams with not great fiber because you lose fiber when you're not very good. Maybe they knew during camp they weren't that good. I don't know. We'll find out, because if they struggle the next 2 games and then get clobbered in Orlando, then I think a lot of questions are answered already at that point.
Yeah. And again,
kudos to the crowd. This is fun. It's never taken me so long to park ever here. I thought that was great. I want so badly for these Carolina fans that I know and I've been writing to and talking to for 3 decades, who a lot of them are football first. They love basketball, but they just want something in football. Carolina wins in everything, but football's been so difficult, either maintain or avoid the landmines. And a lot of those guys I've been talking to, and gals I've been talking to the last few weeks, I really wanted them to win this game and have a really good season for those people, because you and I talk about the reward. Football fans haven't been rewarded here. Basketball has. And I feel bad. I feel bad for the people who put the wristband on and thought, this is it, man. Look at him. There he is out on the field. And they're going home tonight like, my God, I can't believe it's just is who it is. What it is. I feel bad for those people. I really do. I'm related to a couple of them. I have neighbors. I get steps with one of them every once in a while. I know what that's all about. And I don't enjoy coming on here and saying all these things that you're not going to want to hear. I feel bad for you. I feel really bad. This place was set up to just take off like a rocket. And it just fell over.
You didn't even ignite. Yeah, there was a spark in that first drive. There was a flutter of.
Well, it's just okay, ready to go. Everybody, get your cameras ready, and then 417 to 32. That's it. I've never seen North Carolina get so dominated, get so whipped, than that 417 to 32 that stretch. And I've seen some absolute garbage here.
Yeah. You're not the only one. You are not the only one.
It's as bad as it gets, especially the circumstances. The circumstances clearly make this it. This is number one. We could be talking Mount Rushmore lately. If you have the Mount Rushmore of wretchedness,
up there,
this is it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of competition right underneath, but this is it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I think that's where we're going to leave it here. And again, like AJ's kind of alluded to, if Carolina comes and they turn things around and they bounce back, we're going to come on these type of podcasts and we're going to talk about it and we're going to give credit where credit's due. But for those who've maybe never tuned into what we do here before, you have to understand when Carolina performs like they did tonight under the circumstances, under all the hoopla and everything, we would be remiss if we came on here and act like it wasn't a absolutely abysmal performance. Maybe the Mount Rushmore, like you've mentioned. And again, we've got to talk about it. We can't dance around that. So I appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's up there.
Again, I think pretty long last year.
Yeah, we could go another 15 minutes. I'll have to go look and see if JMU was longer. To be honest with you, I might go do that before I edit, just out of curiosity, because I bet it's close. But I think we probably went longer on this one, to be completely honest with you. But again, I think we get to go another 45 if we wanted to. So many different things to dissect.
I have to go at my column, so I have to go revisit this in a few minutes and bang it out. And
you do. You got to go try to make some sense on paper with it.
Palatable for our many readers.
Yeah. But again, we appreciate everybody that's tuned in. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of our Three Things Postgame podcast. Make sure you head on over to TarHeels247.com and sign up. Premium subscription. I mean, AJ, our message boards, our game thread, I know it wasn't necessarily for the positive reasons, but man, our game thread today was absolutely on fire. Just everywhere. It was really cool to see.
Yep. It was. There's a lot of interest. Carolina football is important. I've been telling people for a long time. But sometimes, you get punch drunk. And, man, I feel bad for a lot of people right now.
I do too. I know a lot of
I don't know the new regime well enough to really kind of have anything. I'm not going to go there, but there's a lot of people I do know. And I feel bad for people here. The people that were around you tonight, the people that were – I went and met a bunch of people down the media elevator, excited. People taking off work tomorrow because this is going to be a great night. Now they're going to want to go to work tomorrow. Or I guess today. People watching this Tuesday, so it's already Tuesday. It's 1:41.
Yes.
Is it 1:41? Yeah, I got to go write my column.
It's a late night pod, man. It's a late night pod. Again.
You get in 12 hours.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. Don't even. We're not going to talk about it here. I think we're not. I'm going to.
No, actually, I think maybe it's perfect timing now.
Just maybe perfect timing now. Maybe they knew something we didn't. I don't know. But I think I told you, like, doing a basketball press conference the day after one of the biggest games in North Carolina football history is just unbelievable. But again, we won't talk about that here. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Appreciate y'all watching as always. Head on over to our website, get signed up. Come on, join our awesome community over there. And again, we hope to see y'all over there soon. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. See y'all next time. Thanks.
Thanks.